Hello, this is Gary Aldridge with Leveraging You, and we do this podcast for business owners and the people that serve them, and the purpose of this is to help you maximize the value of your business. I try to bring in various subject matter experts, so you're not just listening to me all the time, but you get to hear other people do what they do and how it helps you. Today, we've got a valuable guest here working in the technology and the processing space. This is Dennis Jackson. He's with Work Solutions. And Dennis, thank you so much for coming today. Welcome. We appreciate you coming.
Thanks, Gary. Enjoying it. Looking forward to the conversation.
I know you, I know you a little bit, and we're about to work on in fact, I'm actually bringing Dennis in to work with a client of mine, and now I've got another one in mind for him. So I'm going to give him some work. But tell us a little bit about yourself and your company and what you do and how you got into it and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, again, the name of the company is Work Solutions. Been doing it for 12 years. Really what we're doing is, my background is really what kind of makes us different. We're not just your typical IT company, because I have an accounting degree, I've been in operations, manufacturing, logistics, banking, and healthcare. My wife used to joke about every 3 to 5 years we were changing jobs, and changing jobs have actually played to a good part, because that's what the value that I can bring back to all the clients that we work with, to see what it is their challenges are. And so many of them have run into software companies that sell them software that doesn't really solve their problem. Ours, on the other hand, we try to roll up our sleeves, get to know them, understand what's going on, work through the weeds, and try to find some little win and let them experience how this tool can help them solve whatever that problem may be. Gary, you and I've worked together before. Again, it's just trying to understand where they're at, because so many of them have had bad experiences.
What are some of the bottlenecks and processes? And I talk about people, processes, and technology a lot. So today we're going to be talking about processes and technology. What are some of the bad processes that you've seen out there that you can speak to?
The biggest one we see, there's all kinds of different segments. The problem is most companies will have 3 or 4, sometimes 5 different systems doing different things. They'll have a CRM. They'll have some kind of operating system. They'll have a separate accounting system. They'll have a shipping system. And then they may even have a different inventory system, because the accounting system doesn't really do inventory. And then they don't all begin to connect. And it's the scenario of Home Depot. So I can have the Home Depot, but I can also call it Home Depot Brentwood, Brentwood Home Depot, the Home Depot of Brentwood. So all of a sudden, it's the same store, but in each system it's viewed as a different entity, and then they don't talk, and all of a sudden sales is reporting one thing, operations is saying something totally different, and accounting's over here shaking their head saying, neither of you guys are right. And so we try to come in and figure out, where does all that stuff begin to happen? And lots of times we're not saying get rid of the systems they've got. Keep some of those things. Usually I'm always saying keep your operating system, keep your accounting system. It's all that stuff in the middle that we can kind of help link it together so things begin to flow and become more logical. And it allows sales to see what they need from an operations standpoint, operations to see what's coming at it, sales and accounting, so they all can see their stuff. And it's not hard, but it takes some time, and you kind of have to step back, and everybody's busy, and so that's where they kind of just put this off and put it off. But once my clients experience it, all of them are like, oh my God, what the heck, why did we not get here sooner and help get this solved, because it makes life so much easier.
Is there a particular tool, technology, or flow charting or processing that you use?
Yeah, so there's 3 or 4 different softwares that we use, but there's one predominant, and I have to kind of give my background. So I was head of purchasing and purchasing and logistics and facilities for a healthcare company here in Nashville 15 years ago. And so if you think back 15 years ago, the cloud existed, but not really. And they needed an internal tool they were going to do biometric screenings at Toyota plants. And so they needed to be able to go out to Toyota, draw blood, and write down, my height and weight and all this stuff. The data would flow to Nashville. The blood would go to Kansas City. Kansas City would get analyzed. The results from the blood would then come back to Nashville and match up, and I'd get a phone call that I'm a female and I weigh, 120 pounds. It's like, well, no, I'm not. I'm a male and I weigh about 250 pounds. And so they needed a tool that kind of made that more interactive and flowed correctly. So we found a tool, again, think about 15 years ago, that did this. We started with 3 users at our company. When I left 3 years later, we had 600 people using it in some form or fashion.
Wow.
In the organization. And that's why I said, okay, there's something to this. Today, the word terminology is low code. But I knew there was something to it. And it was better than Excel, and it was better than Access. And you didn't have to have this great IT experience. But the IT department loved it because it had all the security and all the audit features and everything to know that it was in a healthcare environment, it was protected. And so I approached that company and said, hey, I think you've got a great tool, but nobody knows about it. People had heard of Salesforce and Oracle and SAP and all that. This is a small version of those, and it's, I always joke, if you price Salesforce, whatever Salesforce's cost is, take a zero off, that's what our cost is going to be.
Wow.
So it's a much lower cost tool, but does a lot more robustness and allows you to do what it needs to do. So I started 12 years ago with no clients. Today we have about 125 clients that we help in some form or fashion. And because of my background, we're able to go in and talk their language. I mean, if you buy gas at Costco, one of our clients manages the inventory for Costco across the country for them. I used to be an oil trader, so I understood that barrels of oil had 52.4 gallons of gas in it. And they're like, how the heck did you know that? I was an oil trader. And so that's kind of what we did. And there's all kinds of different things we do with it. And it can be as simple as a very simple CRM to a very complex operating system for healthcare systems, or we do a lot with interior design firms, construction firms, all that kind of stuff. It's really wherever, and everybody has the same problem. They all have lots of data, they have processes, something's broken, but they know how to operate and they know how to account for it, but it's all that stuff in the middle that's where it goes haywire.
Would it be a fair explanation? I'm trying to really simplify it so I can understand it. And let's say, because I'm on the financial side, and this happens all the time, where we've got data coming out of systems A, B, C, and D, but they don't talk to one another. So I download something from A, do some stuff in Excel, put it into B, other stuff comes out. We massage and slice and dice that, put it into C. So we're constantly taking data out of one system and putting it into another. Would it be fair to say that you bridge those gaps so there's less human intervention and less opportunity for error and more accuracy?
That's it. And that's our tagline on it. If you went to my website, it's bridging operational gaps, and that's exactly what we do. And a good story.
I did not read that before the podcast, by the way. It's just
that's our tagline. And a good story for it. We had one client that they were doing something where they had an operating system, and sales had this accounting or this spreadsheet that they were using to quote it. Well, someone had said that the markup was supposed to be, make it up, 35%. Well, on one special project, they gave somebody a discount and they made it 3.5%. Somebody forgot to go back and change it for a year to 35%. Ooh. And so every project that came out in this Excel spreadsheet was at 3.5%. At the end of the year, they're sitting there going, why aren't we making any money? They looked in the spreadsheet. In our world, you're able to see all that stuff, and based on visibility, you can see who changed what. It'll tell you that, hey, it's below whatever your margins are, and we do a lot with the red, yellow, green. So you could see that, hey, I expect it to be in this range. Visually, you can see where it's at, and you don't wait for the end of the year. You see it firsthand. And so those are just some horror stories that we typically run into.
I think another place, I think of lots of benefits to what you do. One is turning data into information. And so the way I explain that is data is just like the raw numbers. It's just like numbers being just thrown out on paper or in a myriad of spreadsheets and stuff. And so accounting is bad, and I'm in that space, like I say, this about just dumping all these numbers on the owner and saying, here it is, let me know if you have any questions. one thing I'm big about is trying to turn data into information to say, don't just give me the numbers, but tell me what they mean.
Right.
So we could put in some sort of queries, processes, buttons, whatever you want to call them, so that you will actually take that data and turn it into information. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and again, you can make it where one person wants to see it as a summary view, someone may want to see it as a spreadsheet, and another one may be very graphical, and they need charts and graphs. And so, literally with these dashboards that we have, they're able to see all this information. And if I'm in sales, I see it from one perspective. If I'm in operations, I may see something totally different, and it creates those triggers. Another way, people always ask kind of, what do we do? And I always use the analogy of if you're trying to lose weight. The scale is the counting. Scales are, you step on and it tells you I weigh 280 pounds or whatever. I'm that coach ahead of you that's telling you that if you eat properly and exercise properly, when you step on the scales, you ought to predict that you're at 240 or 260 based off of whatever it is you were supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. And so I said, we become much more proactive instead of reactive. And I have an accounting degree, and most companies are much more reactive. That's where you still work with accounting. You still have to have the accountants, and you have to have the debits and credits. It's the Bible. But we can help tell you what's going to go into the Bible versus kind of wait until the 15th of the following month to see did everything close and what's it all going to do. And I think that's a big shift for a lot of businesses.
Another benefit I see, because I hear business owners, this isn't new, business owners saying I have a hard time hiring people or skilled labor or professional level or fill in the blank with whatever it is they're trying to hire. They have a hard time finding hire it. So this is a way where you could actually get more information with fewer people involved. Correct. Actually fewer hands on deck, where you could instead of hiring the people, you can get the systems to work for you and to work with one another, so you can get more done with fewer people, which is Correct. Kind of like a holy grail.
Exactly. And I never go in pitching that we're going to reduce headcount, but it's going to happen. Usually it's more of someone leaves, you just don't have to replace after you get this going.
Right.
I've got one right now. It's a manufacturing firm. They receive raw materials, and these raw materials are chemical based, and so they get all these spec sheets in. And they in a day they can get anywhere between 80 to 200 spec sheets. So there's lots of these coming in. They had 5 people that would actually take these spec sheets, review them, and then they had. I'd never seen a spreadsheet this big. It was 45 tabs across the bottom, and it went all the way across on each tab. So they would put in what that chemical was, and then manually go through and look to see was it within tolerances. And so it took 5 of them, and they were only getting about 60% of these done in a day. We created a tool that they scan the spec sheet and they use their phone, so they just take a picture of it. We extract the data off of that spec sheet. It goes into our tool, all the tolerances are there. And within 15 seconds, it tells them, is it red, green, or yellow? And so all 5 of those people are doing something else now. And they have one person that just oversees all that stuff. And then it communicates all the way down the production line of that lot, is it green or yellow? If it's red, it stops. But if it's yellow, they still could work with it. And so those are just examples of how you can make life easier. And that particular client, that's not what we started with. We started with inventory with them. But as we got to know them, there were just different things that they wanted to add and do, and that's how we've done it with them.
I think about it not so much in terms of reducing headcount, but reducing future additions to headcount. So if you have 100 people, you're not going to go down to 80 people. It's just that you don't have to hire the next 20 or the next 10 or the next 5 or whatever. Right. Or instead of expanding your accounting department from 5 to 10 people, you can just do it with more systems. Right. And I'm using those numbers. They're just for explanatory purposes. I don't mean to say you've got to have an accounting team of 10 people, but I can think of a myriad of places. Now, I'm the financial guy. I tell them I'm a numbers geek, but I can think of a number of places and clients where that would have been really, really helpful. What are some of the industries you've worked in? You say you got 125 clients. So, what are some of the industries where you concentrate?
Yeah, so a lot in that inventory manufacturing world, we spend a lot. So we're not an accounting system, so they're going to keep their current accounting system, but they need help on those reorder points and how to manage that inventory more effectively. 2 years ago, it was just trying to get inventory and figure out what was going on production-wise. This year, it's shifted to, hey, help me figure out how to reduce inventory because I got too much stuff, and how do I get rid of it? And how do I make sure I don't reorder more stuff? And there's all kinds of neat ways you can do it. I've got one that has lots of seasonality to it. So we put some other variables in there so that they know if it's, let's say it's a Christmas product, they would actually ramp up right now because it knows that they need to have that for August, September, October to ship that out to sell it in November, December in the retail. But in December, January, don't order any more of this stuff. And it keeps track of all that. That's kind of cool. We do lots with, like I said, field service, construction types of world where they're tracking projects and having to keep track of things and report to multiple different systems. Interior design's a big one that we work with because they'll design things in CAD systems. They'll I'd say 90% of them have QuickBooks as their accounting tool, but they've got all this stuff in the middle, all those POs that have to happen. And the sofa for an interior design might have 5 POs. I might have a PO for fabric, a PO for studs, a PO for wood, fireproofing, and a PO to put it all together. QuickBooks doesn't handle that well. Ours, we can see all that stuff. It creates those purchase orders. And then there's all these moving dates of what all has to happen and keep track of all that stuff, and then brings it to life so they can then bring it to the customer and do their magic. But it pushes it to some kind of accounting system where they actually do the payments or receipts of cash and their debits and credits and all their financials there. We do some in healthcare. I'm not gonna lie, most of our clients are small to mid-size, so healthcare is always a risky one if it's HIPAA related. So we have tools that work with them, but unfortunately HIPAA creates all kinds of extra costs that a lot of small to mid-sized businesses can't afford.
Right.
We do some with retail. We've got quite a few in the CBD oil world where they've got a tool called ShipStation where they're keeping track of their shipments and orders. But again, they needed that inventory piece. It's really, if you work in spreadsheets, we can make your life a lot easier. And I'd say the vast majority of people are in spreadsheets.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every now and then I see some new widget, some new tool that says, we're going to do away with spreadsheets. You're going to use this new widget. And they're like, nah, you're not.
No. And that's what's neat with ours. It relieves some of the spreadsheets, but then you can export this data with a click of the button back into spreadsheets because there's still people that still have to do something with the data. So it's not like you're forbidden to use it. It's just you realize, hey, there's a better way and life's a lot easier with it.
Here's another benefit I can see, and I'm pushing you out there, is that people look at the numbers through a different set of lens, okay? Sales needs certain information. They want to see revenue growth. They want to see gross margin. They want to see gross margin by customer maybe or by product. That's one view, okay? Then the operations guy is going to be looking at his cost, cost of materials coming in, cost of labor, cost of overtime, those kind of things. Sales is not looking at that, and the operation guy is looking at that. And of course, then there's also the financial person. And operations and finance might be looking at this the same way. If I put so much materials in the funnel, how much am I going to get out the other end, and what's going to be my labor rate, or my output per labor dollar? How about that? Output per labor. Massive metric, okay? We talk about key performance indicators. What a massive metric to be able to handle automatically. How many widgets do I get per labor dollar on the outside coming through there? That'd be fabulous to know. I bet you a lot of people don't know that, but that would be a wonderful metric to know, on an automated daily basis. And then we can talk about dashboards after that.
Exactly. And then you can have it where you can see it, and the tool we have, it works on your PCs and Macs. It works on your iPhone. So you can be remote and it'll pop up and you can see right there what you're doing. We have lots of people that use it for scheduling. So, we've got a company that does foam insulation of multifamily housing. So they have a tool that quotes what is going to go into it. We take that quote information and we know the size of trucks, and it calculates what can go into that truck. Someone picks it during the night, and then it creates the schedules of who's going where based on, that's not only available labor, but it's looking at distance to travel. and it takes the logic and puts them so that they know to go in this part of town tomorrow. Right, last year they were looking at fuel costs, so they were trying to keep their fuel costs as low as possible. So it just depends on where they're at, what they're trying to do. Like I said, it always comes back to people and process that you talked about before, Gary. You're not going to get rid of people. That we keep hearing all this AI stuff, and I'm like, okay, maybe in California and the East and West Coast and high-end companies, I got lots of clients that are still spreadsheets and QuickBooks, and AI is not going to impact them for a long time.
Yeah, the SBA says there are 30 million small businesses in the U.S., okay, 30 million, and 99% of those will not exceed 10 million in revenue. So that's what this podcast is for.
Exactly.
It's for those guys that are not going to spend $1 million plus on a new SAP system. This is not the target market for that. These are the guys that are bogged down in the daily details of spreadsheets and, survival and trying to grow and maximize the value of their business, because Exit Planning Institute says like 4.5 million businesses are going to exit in the next 10 years. However, 70% of those won't sell. They'll just close their doors, because they're not sellable. So the whole point of this whole podcast series, Business Owner, is to help get you in a place where you can actually sell your business and get maximum value for that versus closing your doors and going home. I mean, what's the difference between closing your doors, $0, and actually selling it for X dollars or X millions of dollars? Which one do you want to do?
And we have a client that we had worked with 6 years ago. It's like they do tile and carpet. So pretty good size, good sized company here in Middle Tennessee, respectful. They were big on using spreadsheets and Access. And then the owner said, hey, what happens if this guy gets hit by a bus that had built the Access stuff? He says, we're screwed.
Yeah.
No offense, but
that's right.
And so they brought us in. We made their life. We started with them in April, and by August of that year, we had it designed, built, and implemented, and they went live. 2 years later, because of this system, made them so much more profitable, much more efficient, that a big carpet group out of Dallas bought them at basically 5 times what they expected they could sell it for.
There you go.
And so, luckily for us, we got to stay with the carpet company in Dallas. So now we have the national one plus some of the other ones across the U.S. that we're working with on some of the softwares and things. So, to your point, spending a little bit of time on systems and making yourself unique and more efficient, it can pay huge dividends if you're thinking about selling or doing some other things in the future, or freeing up. If nothing else, it frees up cash so you can actually do more stuff currently while you're running the business.
Right.
You have kind of 2 different choices you could do.
And I tell people that the more time and money the buyer has to put into your business, the less value he's going to pay you for that business.
Correct.
So the better it's running, then the less time and money he's got to put into it, more value he's going to pay you for it. So what I hear from you is a number of benefits, either in no particular order, but I think about people, process, and technology. On the people side, you get more done with fewer people, and you're going to get more out of the people that you have. On the process side, you're going to remove bottlenecks. You're going to turn data into information, get it more near real time. Okay, and then what I think I hear you saying too is, from a system standpoint, sounds like you're systems agnostic. So because you're going to go into this place and they're going to have whatever ABC systems or XYZ systems, and you're not necessarily replacing them. You're just helping them better utilize them, right?
Correct. So what our process is, we do a complimentary whiteboard session with the potential client, mainly trying to understand, what do you do, what works, what doesn't work. From there, we'll come back and give you a graph, an overview that says, here's kind of what we heard your process to be. We'll give you kind of a write-up of wins that you could get. And we'll tell you, hey, there's systems you got to keep. I mean, it kills me when I hear someone that they're gonna buy an ERP system. And it's like, how much you could spend? Oh, it could be $200,000 or $300,000. It's like, oh my God, don't. If QuickBooks does debits and credits for you, stick with it for the most part, because the other things with today's world, you can put small bits and pieces to make an ERP system for pennies on the dollar. Now, if you're starting from scratch, or you're a big company, you need Oracle and SAP and all those other ones, or NetSuite. But all these, and sometimes I'm my own worst enemy because I was VP of purchasing, and so I get told by many of my clients, you negotiate your price down. And I said, my whole goal is to help you be successful and do it at a low cost. You should not be spending huge dollars on this. And that for me, I make good money because I got lots of clients. I'm not making a lot off of one client, but it's the fact that, and then you get the best of practices across all the different industries, because I don't have a lot of people that compete with each other. So I can share wins across different industries and help share how people can grow and do different things and see the different light.
So chances are you've already seen it before and you've got a better solution or several different examples of that.
Yep. I mean, we're working with one right now that they're doing inventory. It's not how I'd have done inventory, but it's how they've been doing it for 20 years. So it's like, okay, we can complement that, because the hardest part of anything is change. It doesn't matter if it's software or people, it's that change part. And so it's just helping them get that win, and just going through that. A lot of times we'll do CRMs with people, and most salespeople do not like CRMs because in their mind it's going to control or monitor what they do. But what I always find out is, okay, what's the number one issue that salespeople have? Number one issue is they don't get paid their expense reports timely. Okay, well then the CRM put the ability to track your expenses, turn it in, and I guarantee you within 2 days I can have your expenses paid if that's the way you want to do it. So then all of a sudden you get the buy-in. So you try two things. Try to find out a buy-in that wins. The second one, if you're putting a system in, if it doesn't have to be ours, give it a name. If you give it a name, it's amazing how people in the team get rallied around it and it becomes theirs versus some outside system that is being thrown at them. And then the third one is get your team to buy into it. Just have them be part of the experience and listen, because most people work in the process know where it's broken. It's the senior managers aren't listening and listening to the worker bees on what needs to be done.
I was telling someone just last week that I know what I do. I think I'm pretty good at what I do, but I know what I don't do. And instead of me trying to get in a lane that's not for me, I know when to bring in other people that are better at that than me. And so on the technology side and the process side, I'm brought in Dennis. I mean, he and I are actually, I'm just telling you this, we're going to work. I brought him into a client of mine. We're going to go tomorrow and do a whiteboard session. We're going to work on their processes. And I just added a new client last week, and I can tell you that right to get off this podcast, I'm going to go email him and tell him that we need to set up a call, because he's got a lot of processes involved that are just not, they're not syncing up just right. We'll just put it like that. And there's a lot of opportunity that we can do to make that work more effectively, more efficiently. So when I get off of here, we're going to do that. Dennis, I'll try to keep these to about 30 minutes. So we're about at that point. I'd love to bring you back and talk about more of this in depth, because I think people are always thinking about growing revenue and growing sales and all that. I get that. There are a lot of sales coaches out there. I'm not one of them. I'm about value coaching, not just sales, and values all over the board. Sales is part of that, but there's a lot more involved with it, which gets back to people, processes, and technology. So I think you're a valuable resource in this space. Please give people a way to contact you so they can contact you directly. You don't have to go. You can call me if you want to, or email me, but please feel free to go to Dennis directly. Dennis, give them your contact information.
Yeah, so my email is the best. It's Dennis, so it's DENNISJ @worksolution.com. That's WORX solution.com. Little tidbit, when I started the company 12 years ago, that extra S at the end was going to be $2,500 that I didn't have. So,
oh wow!
So we only provide one solution. No, just joking. Or you can call me or text me 615-336-7094, and then our website, it's worksolution.com, and there's all kinds of white papers on there if you like to see studies. There's all kinds of videos that take you through kind of things we do and all that kind of stuff. So a couple different ways to reach out. And I always tell people, once you reach out and talk to us, we'd love to connect you with clients of ours, because the clients can speak even broader than I can about what it's done to make their life easier and encourage you to talk to them. They're the best salespeople I've got.
Great. James, my son and our audiovisual producer and editor here, will put the contact information on the podcast so people can see it as well. Dennis, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it, and I'd love to have you back and talk about this in more depth.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.